Against Passeist Venice by F. T. Marinetti, Umberto Boccioni, Carlo Carra, and Luigi Russolo, April 27, 1910. We repudiate the old Venice, enfeebled and undone by centuries of worldly pleasure, though we too once loved and possessed it in a great nostalgic dream. We repudiate the Venice of foreigners, a market for counterfeiting antiquarians, a magnet of snobbery and universal imbecility, a bed whose bottom has been staved in by caravans of lovers, the bejeweled hip bath of cosmopolitan courtesans, the cloaca maxima of passeism. We want to cure and heal this putrefying city, this magnificent sore from the past. We want to reanimate and ennoble the Venetian people, fallen from their ancient grandeur, drugged by the morphine of nauseating cowardice and debased by the habit of shady business. We want to prepare the birth of an industrial and military Venice that can dominate the Adriatic Sea, that great Italian lake. Let us hasten to fill in its little reeking canals with the ruins from its leprous and crumbling palaces. Let us burn the gondolas, rocking chairs for cretins, and raise to the heavens the imposing geometry of metal bridges and factories plumed with smoke, to abolish the cascading curves of the old architecture. Let the reign of divine electric light finally come to liberate Venice from its venal moonlight for furnished rooms to let. On 8 July 1910, some 800,000 leaflets containing the above manifesto were launched by the futurist poets and painters from the top of the clock tower onto the crowds that were returning from the Lido. So began the campaign that the futurists have sustained for 3 years against Passeist Venice. The following speech against the Venetians was improvised by Marinetti, the poet at the Venice Theatre, and provoked a terrible battle. The futurists were hissed, the Passeists were beaten up. The futurist painters Boccioni, Russolo, and Carra punctuated the speech with resounding slaps. The fists of Arnaldo Mazza, a futurist poet who was also an athlete, left an unforgettable impression. Marinetti's futurist speech to the Venetians. Venetians! When we cried let's murder the moonlight, we were thinking of you, old Venice, grimy with romanticism. But now our voice has grown louder, and we add with a roar, let's free the world from the tyranny of love. We are sick of erotic adventures, lechery, sentimentalism, and nostalgia. Why persist, Venice, in offering us veiled women at every twilight turn of your canals? Enough, enough. Stop whispering your obscene invitations to all the passerby of the earth. O Venice, you procuress, you who under your heavy mantilla of mosaics persist in preparing enfeebling romantic nights, querulous serenades, and frightful ambushes. O Venice, I too once loved the sumptuous half-shadows of the Grand Canal steeped in exotic voluptuousness, the feverish pallor of your beautiful women who glide down from their balconies on stairways, illuminated by moonlight, amid a slanting rain and rays of moonlight, to the tinkling of crossed swords. But enough. All this absurd, abominable, and irritating stuff makes us sick. And now instead we want electric lamps with 1,000 rays of light that can brutally stab and strangle the mysterious shadows. Pestiferous, alluring shadows. Your Grand Canal, dredged and widened, will inevitably become a great mercantile port. Trains and trams launched on the broad roads that will be constructed over the former canals. At last they will be filled in. Will bring you heaps of goods, and the streets will teem with crowds of shrewd, wealthy, busy businessmen and industrialists. Don't howl against the so-called ugliness of the locomotives, trams, automobiles, and bicycles, in which we discern the first outlines of the great futurist aesthetic. Who knows? They may even serve a useful purpose, smashing some horrid and grotesque Nordic professor in a Tyrolean hat. But you want to prostrate yourselves before every foreigner, and your servility is repugnant. Venetians, Venetians, why do you continue to wish to be loyal slaves of the past, seedy custodians of the greatest brothel in history, nurses in the saddest hospital in the world, where mortally corrupted souls languish with the pestilence of sentimentalism? Oh, there is no lack of images to describe your vainglorious and silly laziness. The son of a famous man, the husband of a celebrity diva, They behave like you. Your gondoliers might be compared to gravediggers in a flooded cemetery, digging ditches in rhythm. Yet nothing can offend you, because your abjection is boundless. One knows, moreover, that you pursue the sage concern of enriching the consortium of grand hotels, and that is why you stubbornly persist in putrefying immobility. And yet once, a long time ago, you were invincible warriors and artists of genius, audacious navigators, efficient industrialists, and tireless merchants. And now you have become hotel waiters, tour guides, pimps, antiquaries, forgers, fakers of old pictures, plagiarists, and copyists. Have you forgotten that first of all you are Italians, and that in the language of history this word means builders of the future? Oh, don't defend yourselves by citing the debilitating effects of the sirocco, for it was exactly this torrid and warlike wind that swelled the sails of the heroes who fought at Lepanto. And one day, some hellish noon, it will be the same African wind that suddenly hastens the mute labors of the eroding waters that are slowly undermining your venerable city. Oh, how we shall dance for joy that day! Oh, how we shall applaud the lagoons, urge them on to destruction, and what a splendid roundel we shall dance around the famous ruins. We shall all be insanely gay, we the last student rebels in this too wise world. So it was, O Venetians, that we sang, danced, and laughed when we learned about the island of Philae that perished like a little mouse behind the Aswan Dam, an immense trap with electric folding doors in which the futurist genius of England imprisons the sacred fleeing waters of the Nile. Shrug your shoulders and scream at me that I'm a barbarian, incapable of savoring the divine poetry that flows among your enchanting isles. Go away, you're no reason to be proud of it. Free Torcello, Burano, and the Island of the Dead from all the sickly literature and endless romantic nonsense that have been draped over them by poets poisoned with Venetian fever. And then, laughing with me, you will be able to see those islands as heaps of manure dropped at random by mammoths who are fording the prehistoric lagoons. But you view them stupidly, content to decay in your filthy waters so as to enrich the consortium of grand hotels, which is carefully preparing elegant evenings for all the beautiful people of the world. Yes, it's no small thing to stimulate them to love. For even if your guest were an emperor, he too would have to navigate slowly through the filth of this vast sewer full of storied shards. His gondoliers would have to ply their oars through several kilometers of liquefied excrement, sniffing the divine odor of a latrine, passing alongside barges heaped with lovely garbage, escorted by suspicious floating paper bags, until at last he would reach his goal in true imperial style, pleased with himself and his lordly scepter. This has been your glory in recent days, O Venetians. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Ashamed of yourselves. You should cast yourselves down, supine one on top of another like sandbags in order to make an earthwork around the borders of the city, while we prepare a great and strong Venice, a military and commercial center for the Adriatic, that great Italian lake.